But it was on the day her ex returned to the country that I saw a different side of her. She ran to the bar to confess her feelings, becoming a role model for women chasing love. But it was like a joke, being left at home to wash dishes and mop the floor. Turns out, marriage was just a buffer zone for her love for him. Someone curiously asked her, "Then what do you consider your current husband?" "A nanny," she replied. Bai Ningbing smiled so charmingly. 2,000 a month? Where else can you find such cheap labor? Laughter erupted from the private room. I was standing outside the door, hearing these words. Tears of laughter started streaming down my face. She said she loved me, would take care of me for a lifetime. Turns out, this leftover food was how she fed me. I liked her for 10 years. And finally, I gathered the courage to ask for a divorce. The cause was actually last month, when she gave me 500 less for living expenses. Where did that money go? She spent it on cufflinks for her ex. I found that exquisite tourbillon cufflink in her car, from a high-end brand, with a design that was incredibly delicate. Before Kixie, I had discovered these cufflinks hidden in the wardrobe. I thought she was finally thinking about Valentine's Day. That night, I happily booked a candlelight dinner, but she didn't show up and didn't reply to my messages. Later, I found out she had gone to the bar to celebrate Kixie with her ex. She even specifically blocked me on her moments at the bar. I watched them walk into the private room from a distance, and at that moment, my heart froze. She had never smiled at me like that. In the private room, her friends teased her, saying, "You two sure moved quickly. Wang Yi just got off the plane, and you two are already together." Wang Yi nodded along, saying after 10 years of twists and turns. Bai Ningbing and I really had a hard time. Then, someone asked Bai Ningbing, "So what do you consider your current husband?" Just then, the waiter brought in the drinks. I clearly heard Bai Ningbing say, "Just a nanny. 2,000 a month? Which housekeeping company offers such cheap labor?" Another round of laughter. I stood outside, laughing until my tears ran dry. I didn't go home. I waited for her outside the bar. When she saw me, there was a flash of panic in her eyes, and she hurriedly walked over. She impatiently asked, "Why are you here?" I calmly looked at her and said, You. Tonight is just a simple company gathering. Wang Yi is the new vice president. We need to get to know each other. Then can you stop getting so close? You're almost kissing me. I was a bit angry, but she mocked me. Don't overthink everything in your head. Isn't it better to have more trust between husband and wife? And you don't understand these business matters at home. The competition is fierce now. Several companies are trying to poach people. Forget it, I won't talk to you anymore. You only care about recipe books. When we got home, she slammed the door and went into the study, very angry. But it seemed more like using anger to cover up her guilt. I didn't comfort her as usual. We chose to give each other the cold treatment. At 2:30 a.m., the study door was violently pushed open. She stormed out, throwing the cushions and pillows from the sofa at me. Have I not explained myself clearly enough? Who are you scowling at? I'm the one who's annoyed by you. I feed and clothe you. Is it really that big of a deal that I gave you 500 less for living expenses? Do you need to make such a fuss? Fang Yuan, if we can live this life, then fine. If not, then let's get a divorce. Fine. She froze. What? I repeated word by word. Let's divorce. She seemed to laugh out of anger, looking at me with disgust. Here you go again. Get your facts straight. It's not that I can't live without you. It's that you're the one living off me. Don't threaten me now when you're hot-headed. Then later beg me lowly. How shameless. She raised an eyebrow and glanced at me, like a sticky plaster. Words hurt like cold wines in June. She never understood. When we first had a Cold War, she mocked me like this. I was shaking with anger, almost on the verge of tears. But later, I realized this was the least painful of it all. What followed was my mother-in-law's scolding, my father-in-law's sarcastic remarks. The whole family spared no harsh words for me. I took out the divorce agreement I had already prepared. I'll take nothing from this family. I don't owe you anything. She grabbed the divorce agreement. Her face turned pale, but she still forced herself to pick up the pen. Finn, I'll give you credit for being brave. Her hand trembled a little, but she still signed her name. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the Civil Affairs Bureau. I've made an appointment, I added. Her hand holding the pen shook, as if her defenses had collapsed. You better not be the one regretting it first. When the sound of a glass bottle smashing echoed from the room, I walked out onto the balcony, gazing at the dim night sky. I lit a cigarette, the glowing tip flickering in and out. I smoked halfway, reflecting on the journey. It seemed like there had been signs all along. Since my company went bankrupt, Bai Ningbing had me stay home full-time. She was the one holding this family together. She had to support her own parents and also take care of me, her husband. Others would joke about her, saying that when she gets pregnant, she'd still have to work until the day she gives birth. Actually, I didn't really care about these rumors, because Bai Ningbing said she liked the meals I cooked and thanked me for helping her take care of her parents and two nephews. She said she was able to climb the ranks, all because of me, her solid support. But later, she kept saying that money was tight, that the cash flow was difficult. I didn't question it. Even when the living expenses were just $1,000, I carefully budgeted and maintained our family's quality of life. Yes, this family wasn't just me and her, but also her parents, her brother and the two nephews. The daily needs of this whole family were mostly taken care of by me. But one day, I accidentally saw the shopping records on her app. There were those 4-digit, even 5-digit expenses one after another, starting from the beginning of the year. And coincidentally, the same month she told me things were tight. The shopping list was full of gifts for men, watches, cufflinks, running shoes, custom-made suits, and various other fancy things. But none of them were for me. I looked at my own Citizen watch, which I hadn't changed in 10 years, and my wardrobe that hadn't been updated in years. A mix of emotions overwhelmed me. In the end, I was just a big fool. The cigarette was completely extinguished, and only a bitter smile remained on my lips. The next morning, I made breakfast as usual, ready to start a new day. Feng Yuan, why did you buy these ordinary eggs again? Didn't I say I wanted sterile eggs? My mother-in-law set down her chopsticks, looking at me with disgust. I smiled faintly, no longer immediately apologizing like usual, but instead speaking with a sharp edge. Life's tight. Sterile eggs cost 3 times as much as regular ones, but the nutritional difference isn't that significant. If you want sterile eggs, maybe you can discuss it with your daughter. At that moment, Bai Ningbing rubbed her eyes and walked out of the bedroom. Why all the noise? So annoying, I kindly reminded her. Hurry up and get ready, or we'll miss the appointment time. You'll have to queue up again. Bai Ningbing widened her eyes, instantly snapping back to reality. Her hair brushed her lips as she said, "Are you really this impatient?" I pointed to the clock on the wall. It's already 8:30. After today, you'll have your wish fulfilled. I'm actually glad it's finally happening. Bai Ningbing angrily stormed back into the bedroom to change. You do know how to play along, knowing I'm not worth this much. She grabbed her ID from the room, leaving me and my mother-in-law staring at each other. My mother-in-law's dissatisfaction was evident on her face. Feng Yuan, are you still upset? Bai Ningbing works so hard, and you're still snapping at her? You're a grown man. How can you be so petty? If it weren't for you being good to our Ningbing, there's no way I'd have let her marry a penniless man like you. Really, it's infuriating. Little Jiazi also threw down his spoon in a huff. The milk is cold, and the eggs are gross. I walked over to them, and my mother-in-law, as usual, waited for me to reheat the milk. Little nephew was also waiting for me to comfort him. But today, I couldn't be bothered to deal with them, and simply dumped the entire breakfast into the kitchen waste bin. I watched as their shocked expressions filled the room. I smiled faintly. If you're not happy, then don't eat. Finally, we left the house. My mother-in-law was still cursing as she walked out the door, hunched over like a scolding woman in the street. On the way, Bai Ningbing and I were both silent. The morning's argument and this silence seemed to have become our new normal. Bai Ningbing kept her head down, playing with her phone, and when we turned a corner, her phone slipped from her hand and fell to the ground. When I picked it up and handed it back to her, I accidentally caught a glimpse of her chat history with Wang Yi. Her nickname for him was Baby. The entire chat page was filled with green message bubbles, occupying 70% of the screen. I used to be someone who wanted to share everything, always chatting with her about anything and everything, but she rarely responded. Her replies always came in slow cycles. I kept telling myself it was because she was busy with work, but today I realized she could reply instantly, just not to me. When we arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau, the marriage registration office was mostly empty, but the divorce line was long. The lady tried to persuade us. Why don't you try talking it over? There's always a way to resolve things. You could try to work on your relationship. I answered with a smile. There's no love left. 10 years from school uniforms to wedding dresses. All the feelings have worn away. The aunt was immediately rendered speechless. Bai Ningbing frowned and glanced at me. Her expression complicated. To be honest, Bai Ningbing and I were childhood sweethearts, though we were separated for a while when I went abroad to study. When I returned, I happened to bump into her after she broke up with Wang Yi, so naturally we ended up together. At that time, I thought, a year of turmoil couldn't shake the 6 years of our relationship. 6 years. I thought I could warm up even the hardest stone. But later I realized, some things can't be forced. When you warm an ice block, it melts into water and nurtures you. But if you warm a stone, it remains a worthless rock, never blooming in the spring. The aunt sighed regretfully. 1 month of cooling off. You're both tall, handsome, and she's beautiful and gentle. You really make a perfect match. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment, or you'll regret it when it's too late. Bai Ningbing and I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, then went our separate ways home. Only 2 hours had passed, and the house was already a mess. The breakfast dishes were left in the greasy sink. Seeds and peanut shells were scattered on the floor. Drink stains and tea spills were everywhere, and the mahjong table was in disarray. Before leaving, my mother-in-law grabbed her scarf and wrapped it around her neck, then started her usual dramatic talk. Remember to mop the floor later. Look at how messy it is. Chan's son-in-law bought her a jade bracelet. The quality is amazing. Really enviable. As she passed by me, she deliberately sighed. Why are you? I couldn't be bothered to respond, and walked straight to the study to grab the suitcase I'd packed the night before. What are you doing? My mother-in-law froze in place. Bai Ningbing also stopped. Where are you going? I simply answered, going home. This is not your home, my mother-in-law asked. I looked at her and replied, good morning, Mum. I've divorced your daughter. From this moment on, this is no longer my home. Nothing in this space, no one and nothing here is related to me anymore. Ningbing, all the things you gave me are in the cabinet. It's over. I don't want to take anything with me. Bai Ningbing suddenly turned around, looking at me in disbelief. Does it really have to be this final? Isn't it enough to make you feel uneasy? I looked at her. I don't want to take anything. I tried to keep my emotions calm. And also, you should stop staying up so late. You're almost 30. Your body isn't the same as it used to be. You need to take care of yourself. Feng Yuan, what position are you in to lecture me? Bai Ningbing, enraged and embarrassed, ran into the room and threw all my things out, including my suitcase. Who cares about your junk? Anything you don't want, just throw it all away. Now, with one less mouth to feed, I can save a bit more money. I chuckled bitterly. I guess I was just talking too much. Later, the guy who had sent me screenshots of Bai Ningbing's moments found me. We agreed to meet at a bar to talk. He was my roommate, Tang. As soon as he sat down, he ordered a bottle of vodka. Fang, I have some bad news to tell you. After drinking, it seemed like he had gathered courage, and he tilted his head slightly. Why don't you guess first? I probed. Are you going to borrow money from me? He waved his hand. No, it's about people around you. Take a wild guess. I suddenly realized, did you find out my wife was cheating? He shook his head. No, it's a bit more dramatic than that. I panicked. Did you also cheat with my wife? Tang was speechless. Yes, it's about your wife. But it's not cheating. I remained silent for a long time before speaking. I've divorced her. To me, she's a stranger now. Just say whatever you need to say. Tang shook his wine glass, the ice cubes swirling in the clear liquid. His tone became serious. I have evidence that your company's bankruptcy was related to Bai Ningbing. Back then, we could have crushed the competition and successfully moved up. But during the most critical bidding phase, we leaked our hand. After that, we kept losing. Our core technology got leaked. Other companies jumped ahead, and we lost countless clients. But this kind of business secret, who else would know but us? After the bankruptcy, didn't you suspect anything? His few words made my whole body break into a cold sweat. My mind drifted back to that spring, when the company went bankrupt and I got seriously ill. That spring felt like the darkest low of my life. From a rising star in the business world, a well-known young entrepreneur, I became a miserable person with debts. During my recovery, my father couldn't handle the blow and passed away. The house was seized by the bank. The car was auctioned off. I was utterly destitute. I had fallen to the lowest point possible. I sat at the street corner, unable to even buy myself a drink. I even considered ending my life. It was then that Bai Ningbing appeared. She stuffed a warm rice ball into my hands. Her eyes reflected my plight. My hair and eyebrows covered in frost. My eyes red from staying up. My jaw was pale, stubbled, and rough. My skin felt like it had been sanded. Fang Yuan, let's get married, she said. Our relationship hadn't lasted long. I thought that, given her need for security, she would end things decisively, but instead, she suggested marriage. I looked up, falling into the brightness of her eyes. The flutter I felt at that moment still stays with me. If I had to describe it, it was like a lost traveler in a foggy forest, on the brink of despair, only to suddenly see the North Star shining through the night sky, guiding them unavoidably toward it. I would unconditionally be good to you, Bai Ningbing said firmly. It was this light that shone into the depths of my despair that made me devoted to her for 6 years. At this point, the DJ at the bar started spinning. The music pounded in my ears. I sighed. Tang. I also doubted things later on, but at that time, I loved Bai Ningbing. Compared to me, Tang was much more rational and calm. He hummed softly. On the night before the bidding, I got up in the middle of the night to grab some documents from the office. And at that time, Bai Ningbing came out of your office. She seemed in a hurry. I tried to recall that night. My memory was fuzzy, but I did remember her getting me drunk. Before the bankruptcy, I had caught her meeting with Wang Yi more than once. Tang continued. Wang Yi was also one of the competitors back then. After winning the bid, he shot up to success, moving up quickly in the company. He even got hired by a multinational company as an executive. He came back to China this time to expand the market. Of course, these are just rumors, not enough to convince you. I found the secretary that Wang Yi fired and used my position to get close to him. Over the course of 6 months, we became close friends. While pretending to complain about Wang Yi, He got drunk and accidentally let something slip. A recording played. First, the sound of glass shattering sharply. He tricked competitors into leaking business secrets. After using them, he just walked away, leaving them in the dust. He even caused their bankruptcy. Do you think he switched jobs based on skill? No, he slept with a female executive at the new company. He was juggling 3 women at once. The recording finished. Tang then showed me the materials the secretary had copied from Wang Yi's computer. Among them were our versions of bid documents, technical drawings for patents we were preparing, commercial marketing plans. My heart felt like it was being sliced with a knife. The pain sharp and unbearable. Tang, bro, pull yourself together. Stop hiding from this. The failure wasn't your fault. My team and I are starting fresh. The new company is booming, and we need your technical expertise. We're going to make it big. After that, Tang raised his glass, signaling me to cheers. We're not just going to turn the tide. We're going to make Wang Yi lose everything. Without hesitation, I clinked my glass with his. The sound of glass ringing was crisp and clear. After the divorce, Bai Ningbing vanished like she was never there. She didn't send me a single message. But to my surprise, our reunion came quickly. At a class reunion, Bai Ningbing appeared on Wang Yi's arm, shining. She had completely changed her cold, aloof demeanor, now dressed sweetly and charmingly. Wang Yi, in a custom suit, looked as handsome as ever. The two of them looked perfect together. As soon as they entered, the classmates started teasing them. Looks like you two are back together. We heard Wang Yi came back to China, and Bai Ningbing finally got rid of her baggage. The power of love really is amazing. Good things are coming. Are you sending out wedding invites soon? Wang Yi, holding Bai Ningbing's arm, smirked. Of course, we'll invite everyone to the wedding banquet. The crowd cheered. But Bai Ningbing's gaze cut through the crowd, locking onto me. I pretended not to notice and turned to chat with a new classmate. This classmate was a potential recruit that Tang had been grooming since her junior year, and she joined our team right after graduation. Bai Ningbing's face darkened instantly, her smile barely holding. Everyone knew she had been married, but because she didn't like being flashy, we didn't have a wedding ceremony. After the marriage, I became a stay-at-home husband, completely isolated from the world. Fang Yuan, you haven't joined us for a reunion in years. What brought you here today? The class monitor sat beside me. Unconsciously, I was being pushed towards Bai Ningbing and Wang Yi. I just got rid of the household chores. I'm speaking honestly. The class leader teased. Is it because your wife isn't considerate? That's impossible. You're so handsome. Back then, your popularity on the confession wall was almost on par with Wang Yi. I was about to respond, but Bai Ningbing sarcastically spoke up. What's the use of being handsome? You're just a pretty vase. Suspicious personality. Narrow-minded. Who could stand that? No wonder you got dumped. Wang Yi gave me a side glance, feigning an air of dignity. He said, how could that be? I remember Fang Yuan was very talented. In college, his project even got angel round investment. The company was doing well too. Bai Ningbing snorted coldly, but in the end, it still went bankrupt. They harmonized like a well-rehearsed act. Without mercy, they revealed my wounds in front of everyone, making the fresh scars bleed once more. I endured the pain, and the corner of my mouth lifted into a cold smile. It went bankrupt. It's all my fault for being blind. I met a white-eyed wolf and a hypocrite. Speaking of which, they really are a perfect pair. A wolf and a fox are well matched. As soon as the words left my mouth, bang! The sound was sharp. Bai Ningbing forcefully smashed her glass on the table. Her knuckles were turning white. Seeing Bai Ningbing lose her composure, Wang Yi quickly held her back. He glanced at me. As if declaring his territory, the class leader sensed the awkward atmosphere and hurriedly changed the subject. Mr. Wang, you're doing quite well lately. You're glowing with success. Wang Yi, flattered, seemed to float in the air, but still, he hypocritically downplayed it. Oh, not at all. There's a bidding project coming up soon. The competition is fierce. Many companies from both home and abroad are watching. If I can't secure it, I might lose my position. Is there any difficulty? Someone asked opportunistically. Wang Yi sighed. There are some issues with tech research and delivery. It's not going smoothly. I threw out a careless remark. Things that were stolen will naturally not go smoothly. The smile on their faces instantly froze. Wang Yi subconsciously avoided my gaze. He said stubbornly, "Fang Yuan, you seem to be doing quite well." I slightly lowered my gaze and casually said, "It's okay. Where are you?" Full is. Where are you? Get up again. I want to be. I regretted so much that my intestines turned green. Fortunately, I stopped the loss in time. Otherwise, I'd still have to endure her shamelessness. As soon as the class leader heard this, he immediately started clapping. Well said. Those heartless scumbags and women who waste love don't deserve a warm home. The topic shifted, and emotional issues started to dominate the conversation. Men and women were discussing their personal relationship experiences. When the conversation grew intense, a few of the female classmates were crying uncontrollably. Bai Ningbing's expression was complicated. She broke free from Wang Yi's hand and started drinking alone in silence. Tonight, the number of times she looked at me directly was more than all the times combined over the past few years. After the drinking session ended, I called a ride-hailing service. While waiting for the driver by the side of the road, she suddenly, as usual, walked over to my side. She whispered, "Fang Yuan, could you give me a ride home on your way?" I waved at the driver. I smiled and said, "Sorry. It's not on my way. My place is in the south of the city." She gave a soft grunt. In a sweet voice, she said, "But my stomach hurts." I thought she was trying to act cute. I thought I would do like before. Pretend to complain, but still pour her milk. Hand her a warm towel to sober up. I took half a step back and coldly said, "Sorry. We're divorced. Now we're strangers." She looked exhausted. "We haven't even gotten the divorce certificate yet. All these years of feelings. Don't you care at all?" I laughed aloud. "I thought for these years you've treated me like a dog, calling me whenever you needed me, and tossing me aside when you were done. After gnawing on the chicken leg, just throwing it away, I had to wag my tail and beg for your leftover scraps." Bai Ningbing froze. The wind blew and her figure wavered. She had once used my research results to flatter other men, leading me to fall into ruin. And when I had nothing left, she pretended to be my savior, squeezing out my last value. At that time, she promised to shield me from the storm, but the storm was all brought by her. I spoke decisively. "Bai Ningbing, keep some dignity for yourself." In the rearview mirror, Bai Ningbing stood in the cold night wind, unwilling to leave. Her figure was frail, her face pale, without the support of her exquisite makeup. She looked especially pitiful. The driver teased me. "Bro, such a beautiful woman is trying to keep you, and you're totally indifferent. Have you quit something?" I rubbed my temples. Something like that. When I decided to let go, the withdrawal symptoms were indeed intense. It felt like countless poisonous insects were gnawing at my bones. Every night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. But after recovering, I felt like I was reborn. When a person is at the lowest point, no matter which way you go, it's always upwards. Once I realized this, I threw myself back into work. And then, good news came pouring in. "Brother Fang, we won the bid. We have money now." He Tang's eyes were full of tears as he looked at me. These years had been extremely difficult for him. He changed jobs frequently and encountered heartless bosses. A non-compete agreement almost drove him to a dead end. During his hardest times, he couldn't even afford his son's medical bills. He worked during the day and drove a taxi at night. By the time he was not even 30, his hair had already turned gray. We had an advantage in both pricing and technology over other competitors in similar products. Ching King. Do you remember that junior I recruited? Her proposal was like icing on the cake. She created a tailored plan based on the consumption characteristics of our city. It was more down to earth than the proposals from foreign competitors. At this moment, he was so excited he was like a monkey from Mount Mi, jumping around, overjoyed. I never expected we could compete with multinational corporations. And even when, at the meeting, Wang Yi's face changed like a color palette, turning from white to red, then to green. He had been boasting to everyone that victory was certain, but ended up getting slapped in the face on the spot. The sound was sharp. Hearing his description, I couldn't help but feel good. But this wasn't over yet. Wang Yi's account had to be settled step by step. This was just the beginning. After work, I received a call. Bai Ningbing's parents had arranged a meeting with my mother, saying they wanted to talk about the situation between me and Bai Ningbing. I calculated the dates, and the 1-month cooling-off period had already passed. According to the law, if no divorce certificate is filed within 30 days after the cooling-off period, it would be considered cancelled. But sorry, I don't buy that delaying tactic. A mere month without returning to Bai Ningbing's house, and it felt incredibly unfamiliar to me. The kitchen was piled high with unwashed dishes, the floor was sticky, and the whole house smelled like it had been marinated in something. It was sour and stinky, like kitchen waste fermenting. Before the divorce, I had to do all the housework. My mother-in-law and Bai Ningbing never lifted a finger. They lived carefree lives. The most infuriating time was when my mother-in-law brought a group of rich women over to play mahjong. I was sweeping the floor while they sat there spitting seed shells and subtly criticized me for being spineless, only doing useless, trivial things at home. I suppressed my disgust and entered the door. I saw both sets of parents sitting on the sofa, and the atmosphere was so suffocating, it felt like I couldn't breathe. Seeing me in a suit, with a powerful aura, Bai Ningbing's mother looked worried. Finally, her father spoke first. Fang Yuan, we know you young people like to rush into marriage, but you can't rush into divorce like this. Besides, you and Bai Ningbing have been together for so many years. How can you just walk away? I quietly asked in return. I never said I was just walking away. Why don't you ask your daughter? In a month of 30 days, doesn't she spend at least 20 of them talking about divorce? Bai Ningbing's father quickly tried to cover up. She was just kidding. Fang Yuan, you're taking this too seriously. You can't take a joke? I stood up, coldly saying, it's only in your eyes that she's still a child. She's so reckless. Who's going to pamper her when she's out in society? And you? How are you even parents? She's almost 30 and you still treat her like a 3-year-old. You have no responsibility. You can't carry the weight of anything. And you're meddling in matters like marriage, trying to smooth things over? Maybe you should reflect on yourselves. When others criticize you, don't be foolish and try to defend yourselves. Make them trap themselves in their own defense. Bai Ningbing's parents were clearly caught in my words. Their faces turned bright red, but this wasn't over yet. I walked up to Bai Ningbing. In a stern voice, I said, in the end, the fault still lies with you. The moment your ex came back, you said I was just a nanny. But who was it that said the family needed a thoughtful person? Who told me to focus on the family? You enjoyed my care for you, but complained that I wasn't good enough for the public eye. How can you be so double-faced? Bai Ningbing looked so wrong and forcefully threw the wedding album in front of me. Is it because you're blaming my family for not giving you enough money? I'll give you an extra 500. No! 1,000. Is that enough? Listen to yourself. Is that even something a person would say? I almost laughed out of anger. At this point, she still thought it was just about $500. Since we're talking about money, let me calculate the costs for her properly. What's the salary of a live-in nanny in a first-tier city? Without 7 or 8,000, can you even hire one? I've been taking care of you all these years, buying groceries, cooking, and tidying up the house. And from time to time, I had to endure the pitiful atmosphere of your family. How much do you give me in a month? After deducting the daily expenses, how much is left for me? In these 5 years, prices have skyrocketed. And not only did you not raise the allowance, you gave me even less. Not even inflation could catch up with it. I'm not exaggerating when I say, even the shops under bridges are wealthier than me. Bing, look at your conscience and tell me, have I treated you well? Who's really to blame for all this chaos? Seeing me on the verge of hysteria, her mother couldn't hold back any longer. How can you, a grown man, be so petty? Weren't you the one who married her because you loved her? Can't you stand such a little grievance? I suddenly turned around, my sharp gaze making her afraid to continue. You, a grown man? This phrase, it sounds like a curse from a witch's mouth. The moment she says it, you have to tolerate every offense she throws at you. The sarcasm and the moral blackmail. Or else you'll appear narrow-minded. I used to endure it, but now... I laughed out loud, and even cried. If I didn't love her, would I have tolerated being trapped in this relationship until now? If I didn't love her, would I have calmly and quietly stayed in this home for all these years? This so-called house husband job. There are no holidays, no salary, no social insurance, not even any dignity. When she said she'd treat me unconditionally, it turned out to be without any financial support. Who would care about that? Bai Ningbing couldn't refute my words. Her expression was filled with extreme pain. My mother stood up, her eyes red. She was a silent person, not good at expressing herself. But at this moment, she spoke with agitation. You're bullying him too much. Every time my son calls, he says he's living well with you. But I didn't expect you to treat him like this. As she spoke, my mother clutched her chest, her face pale, nearly collapsing. After my father passed away, she had been recovering in the countryside. But Bai Ningbing's parents had somehow convinced her to leave the countryside and come to a city all alone. After a bumpy journey, she arrived here exhausted, only to be treated like this. I didn't care about Bai Ningbing's family anymore, and hurriedly took my mother to the hospital. While I was taking care of the admission procedure, I saw Bai Ningbing standing there, biting her lip. I didn't even look at her, and walked straight to the payment counter. She had not yet taken a step forward when she was tightly embraced from behind. Her hands trembled as though she were afraid of losing something precious. Feng Yuan, I was wrong. I'm very sad too. I will change. I slowly pried her fingers apart, just as she had been indifferent to me back then. When you're sad, go find Wang Yi. I'm not a trash can. I don't absorb negative emotions. Bai Ningbing shook her head frantically. I'm just in an ordinary superior-subordinate relationship with him. I pushed her away. I looked into the panic in her eyes. I'm only nearsighted and astigmatic, with 300 degrees. I'm not blind. Which superior-subordinate would spend their time outside work, replying to hundreds of messages? Which superior-subordinate would choose a couple's hotel to discuss business? Bai Ningbing, my family has already been shattered because of you. What more do you want? As she said this, her fear grew as she looked at me. What did you find out? I calmly said, Lucas law, where there's contact, there will be traces. What do you think? Bai Ningbing froze in place. After sending my mom back to the countryside, I began to carry out my next plan. I had someone investigate Wang Yi's boss. She was indeed a female executive, middle-aged and still unmarried. She spent most of her time traveling on business, but I heard she's past that crazy phase of pushing her career so hard. She plans to settle down next year and find a partner. Coincidentally, Wang Yi, a few years younger than her, had once made her a promise. 1001. I quietly played the role of a small assistant behind the scenes. This female executive was really talkative and confident. She handled things with both decisiveness and tact. After one meeting, everything went smoothly. As the meeting ended, a mysterious gift was delivered right to the female executive's desk. A diamond ring. He Tang feigned surprise. "Oh, President Ju, I have a friend who works at a jewelry store. She said Mr. Wang Yi customized these couple's diamond rings there, and it's meant for a proposal. I didn't expect it to be sent directly to the company." The female executive paused for a moment, covered her mouth and smiled. Her secretary, quick-witted as she was. "The person who sent the ring said it was for President Wang's girlfriend. I just privately brought it over. Office romances, after all, are best kept private." This secretary knew the rules. The female executive smiled shyly. She sweetly said, "You all have to keep this a secret for me. He's on a business trip right now. Won't be back until tomorrow. Don't worry, we'll definitely keep it a secret." He Tang and I replied in perfect unison. When the female executive picked up the diamond ring to try it on, she hesitated. "The size is wrong. It's too small." Since this matter was of great importance, the female executive went straight to the jewelry store. "Hey, guess what? The store clerk was my friend, and the diamond ring was indeed ordered by Wang Yi. As for this matter, I didn't fabricate anything. I just subtly pushed things along." The clerk looked confused. "That's impossible. I personally input the data." "Wait a moment." As I said this, the clerk seemed to have something difficult to say. I quickly added fuel to the fire. "What happened? This is indeed Mr. Wang's girlfriend. He's on a business trip in Africa. Won't be back for a while to pick up the ring." The female executive's gaze became sharp, and her tone turned serious. What exactly is going on? When Mr. Wang came to order the diamond ring, he was with another woman. As soon as those words were spoken, the situation exploded. The female executive's face instantly turned as dark as the bottom of a pot. "Did you send it to the wrong person? Please double-check the phone number. This is the backup number Mr. Wang left. He said that if anything went wrong, to call this young lady." The female executive looked at the number on the tablet, and her expression became darker than the pot's bottom. Just then, the female executive's phone rang. It was a call from Wang Yi. "Baby, I changed my flight to tomorrow morning. I'm already downstairs at the company." Surprised, He Ting and I exchanged a knowing smile. "Hey, we thought we wouldn't get to see this drama." But unexpectedly, the timing was perfect. The female executive, being someone used to big scenes, still maintained her composure. A professional smile hung on her lips. However, if I hadn't seen her nails nearly digging into her palms, I would have truly believed she wasn't bothered. She instructed Wang Yi to come directly to the mall. Then, leaning on the sofa, she slowly pointed at the ring. "Explain. Who was it that customized these couple rings with you?" Wang Yi clearly panicked, but still smiled awkwardly. "Diamond ring? Baby, are you mistaken?" As soon as the clerk saw Wang Yi, she immediately recognized him. "Mr. Wang, our diamond rings can only be customized once in a lifetime, sir. You need to show your ID on the day of customization." Seeing he was exposed, Wang Yi immediately changed his expression. He smiled awkwardly and said, "All right. I originally wanted to prepare a surprise for my girlfriend. Didn't expect it to be discovered early." The female executive quietly watched him try to cover up. "Such a pity. This isn't my size." The clerk also skillfully added another jab. "This young lady just tried it on. The diamond ring size is too small." Wang Yi still wouldn't admit it. "I must have remembered the wrong date. No big deal. I'll just pay again to have a new one made for my girlfriend." The clerk, expressionless, said, "Sir, you were the one who brought another lady to measure the size." With every rebuttal, The female executive's face grew darker. Realizing he couldn't argue his way out, Wang Yi immediately began to beg, "Baby, it's not like that. Let me explain." Smack! The first slap landed on Wang Yi's handsome face. "You use my money to keep a little mistress?" The female executive asked angrily. "No, I don't." Wang Yi could only beg for mercy. Smack! The second slap followed right after. "Do you think a phone number is enough? I'll expose everything about you," I said coldly with a sneer. "No! I just wanted to surprise you." Wang Yi tried to explain. Smack! The third slap sent him spinning, disoriented. The female executive rubbed her slightly reddened hand and said with a chilling tone, "Do you remember how you promised me you'd settle down? The last time I gave you a project, you swore it would be fine, but the contract got taken away. This time, on your business trip, the client keeps complaining. The progress is a complete mess. Is your resume even real?" Wang Yi, the one thing I hate most is someone who's incompetent but still acts like a king. After saying that, the female executive clicked her heels, grabbed her six-figure Hermes bag, and left without looking back. Wang Yi's face turned as pale as a ghost. His clenched fists had nowhere to release his anger. Finally, he slammed them into the jewelry store's glass display. With a loud crash, it drew the attention of the patrolling security guards. One punch clearly wasn't enough to vent his frustration. The veins in his arm bulged, and he angrily grabbed a chair, ready to continue smashing. The security guards, seeing the situation, immediately panicked. "Ow!" Wang Yi struggled and screamed, his eyes filled with despair, mumbling to himself, "It's all over." Truly, when you're on the decline, it's like a mountain collapsing. After Wang Yi was ousted, the news about his office scandals and arranging multiple hotel bookings leaked. Back when he was parachuted into his position, he was so full of himself. But when he was fired, he fell to the ground like a dog. The female executive even made it clear in the industry that anyone who hired him would be crossing her. After Wang Yi was fired, he shamelessly came to borrow money from me. I didn't bother to be polite. I immediately introduced him to some online lending platforms, including one from LD. Before long, the class monitor privately told me that Wang Yi had been borrowing money from classmates under the guise of an investment project. I was warned to stay alert. I pretended to be surprised, and the class monitor immediately told me that Wang Yi hadn't repaid the loans, and several victims had already started suing him. As for Bai Ningbing, she couldn't stand the constant sabotage and eventually quit due to the gossip. Her salary had increased many times over the years, but her spending became more reckless. Manicures costing 1,000, facials in the 4,000 to 5,000 range, buying a purse for 10,000 or more, and clothes and shoes were endless. She even occasionally maxed out to credit cards. In the past, despite her reckless spending, I was always there, helping her balance things out, so the family was able to run smoothly. But after she left her job, there was no financial planning, and her savings were quickly depleted. Soon enough, she was struggling to make ends meet. In contrast to their downfall, I was rising step by step, even successfully applying for a patent. The company directly gave me shares and a house. My wallet was steadily growing. I bought myself a new watch, a new phone, and even created a dedicated closet for my custom suits. Thinking back to the past, when I was financially strapped, I spent every penny I had on Bai's family. Not a single cent was left for myself. But now, I've started to shift my mindset. I can't keep denying myself. I deserve the best this world has to offer. One day, while walking my dog, I unexpectedly ran into Bai Ningbing standing in front of a street stall. She used to look down on buying things like that. Bai Ningbing looked at me from a distance, her voice slightly distorted. "Fang Yuan." I walked over confidently, bought a grilled sausage, and then fed it to my dog. My dog joyfully jumped on me, wagging its tail and stepping on my feet in excitement. "See, Even dogs wag their tails in gratitude when they receive kindness. Why is it that humans, despite being in good fortune, don't realize it? She walked up to me, hesitated for a moment, then spoke. You're right. At first, I had the thought of reconciling with Wang Yi. I was so naive, so young. Holding on to illusions of youthful obsession, I kept thinking about how he came to rescue me when I was bullied, or how he pursued me so passionately during college. I remembered how my heart raced when he confessed his love to me in public. So when he came back, I couldn't wait to relive those feelings from the past. She suddenly shared all this with me, and it felt so unreal. I looked at the hand she tightly gripped on my wrist and asked in confusion, "Why are you telling me all this?" She trembled as she spoke, her voice husky. "I'm really sorry for the things I did behind your back. I was really out of line. I'm not a good person. After you left, everything fell apart in our house. There was no more hot soup, and no one reminded me when to take my medicine. Everything was a mess. Fang Yuan, I woke up every night after you left. I wish this was just a nightmare. You were still lying beside me, encouraging me. I was wrong," she said, giving a bitter smile, finally shedding tears. "Fang Yuan, can we not be apart, please? Her words were extremely humble, almost pleading. "I'm scared of losing you." The sky grew darker. The warm glow of fireworks blurred her beautiful outline. The yellow street lights bathed her long hair in a soft golden hue. This scene was just like when she first entered my world, like a divine maiden, and then took me home. But she was still stuck in the past, while I had already moved forward. I picked up the dog, took a deep breath, and said, "When you took my drawings to please Wang Yi, did you ever think you would lose me? When you eagerly went to reconcile with him, did you ever think you would lose me? When you mocked me, peeling back my wounds with cold sarcasm, did you ever think you might lose me?" A series of questions left by Ningbing speechless, unable to respond. "The truth is, you're not afraid of losing me. You just need a naive fool to manipulate." After I said this, I decisively walked away from her. She was like a drowning victim tangled in seaweed, unable to catch her breath, her face filled with guilt and regret. "But if you keep ignoring me, I'll be cornered by debt collectors with no way out," she said, her voice breaking into sobs. "Damn it! What does this have to do with me?" I couldn't help but say. Her voice trembled. "Do you really hate me that much?" "Yes, it was you who toyed with my feelings. It was you who made my efforts worthless. It was you who left me bruised and broken. Why shouldn't I hate you?" I answered. If forgiveness were that easy, I would have bought a plane ticket to Da Vinci Airport in Rome and gone to St. Peter's Basilica to see Michelangelo's masterpiece, the sculpture of the Virgin Mary holding Jesus. Then I would knock the Virgin down and take her place, holding Jesus myself. After the cooling off period, I called you countless times. You rejected every call. "Then let's meet in court," I said, imitating her cold tone. "Don't demean yourself like a stubborn plaster that won't come off." By Ningbing was nearly at the edge of breaking down. As I strolled under the free night breeze, I suddenly understood the root of her harsh words toward me. In truth, when there's no love left, heart-wrenching words can be said so easily. After work, I finally had the free time I once lost to divide my time between sleep, books, exercise, and admiring flowers, birds, and trees, mountains, rivers, and seas, instead of wasting it on that deeply emotional, yet the most painful, love. By Ningbing's mother called me several times, her voice full of heartache and despair. "Fang Yuan, I beg you." She's not eating or drinking. She's drowning herself in alcohol day and night. This isn't working. She always listened to you the most. Can you please come and talk to her? She no longer dares to insult me. Now she only grovels, pleading. How about she takes care of you instead? This world is truly too realistic. When you eagerly chase after someone, They'll think you're cheap, but when you face them coldly, that's when they realize they can't shake you, not even a bit. And then they start to regret it. I really wonder if alcohol can make Ningbing recall those memories she once ignored. When she was beaten and bruised, she only saw Wang Yi's self-directed heroics, but ignored me treating her wounds, carrying her to the hospital in the middle of the night, kneeling on the floor begging the doctor to squeeze her in. When Wang Yi publicly confessed to her, she only saw that dazzling, shining youth and the vibrant rush of youth, but ignored me picking up the tab for her heartbreak, getting drunk with her, helping her get back on track. So, is the order of appearances really that important? I appeared first in Bai Ningbing's life, and countless times I cleaned up her mess, but she only saw those fleeting fireworks in the hall, and ignored the fact that I was silently cleaning up everything behind her. Boom! The fireworks faded. All that fell were ashes, and I was like the person holding the broom, cleaning up the mess. Forget it. It doesn't matter anymore. I hung up the phone and started discussing the divorce details with my lawyer. My lawyer friend expressed deep sympathy for my situation. I've been dealing with divorce cases for many years, seen many odd couples, but rarely do I see a separation as resolute as yours. Most couples just endure it quietly. Why? I asked curiously. The lawyer friend adjusted his frameless glasses. Because no matter how bad their relationship is, at least they've adapted to each other and become numb. It's like those fruits that become oddly shaped because they're squeezed by foreign objects. Even if the fruits are deformed, they're already tightly wedged against the foreign object. The cost of separation is too high. At best, it's a few broken bones. At worst, one dead, one injured. I hope this experience doesn't knock you down too hard, so you can't get back up, he said with some concern. I made myself a big meal, took a photo and posted it on Moments. How could that happen? I will march forward and embrace the new life that belongs to me.